What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Writer's Realm podcast, and thanks for joining us on the epic adventure we call writing. We're your hosts, Bob Adato,
Holly Robilliard,
and Austin Matthews.
And today we're going to talk about cartography with Domino.
Hi.
Hey, glad to have you on here.
Thanks, I'm very glad to be here.
Yes.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, Domino, also Dominique. I wrote it in I wrote things, and then I did. Okay, we're going to move on.
It's fair.
Yeah.
Dominique, how can we find you?
So all of my social media is Domino44 or Domino44 Maps. Also, a couple times it's Dominique Strange. I'm most active on Instagram, which is Domino44 Maps.
Okay. And do you have a website as well?
Not currently. Mine is down at the moment. I'm working.
Okay. Okay. And do you have any books? Are you an author as well, or just cartography?
Just cartography. I used to think that I would get into writing books. I was an avid book reader growing up, of course. But when I started writing my own stories, I always just took all the time into the world building process, and I forgot the characters, and I couldn't do a storyline. I just did the other stuff. So that's what I mainly focus on now.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get into the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I shared.
So I admire you guys.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Well, of course.
Well, yeah.
But
well,
yeah.
To be fair, I got started doing mine as like backgrounds for like role-playing characters, and I was like, yeah, I kind of like this. So I just kept world building until I was like, well, I guess I should write a book. So
that's funny.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I did share your Instagram with our co-hosts, and we've all seen your work, and it's just lovely and fantastic and brilliant. And just and I love your posts. You do these posts where you say, hey, what do you like the most? You know, and those are I think that's a perfect feedback, right? For maybe new people, or whether rivers or different mountains, or but what got you into cartography?
Reading. It really boils down to reading. And I would always go back to the map, and I would chart out where the characters went. I remember reading Aragon and just basically poring over the map as much as I read the book. J.R.R. Tolkien, all of his work, knowing his background with map making. So yeah, love of reading.
Okay,
for sure.
Definitely love of reading. I mean, that's why we're all here. But like you went specific into, because we could break this down into all kinds of different things: story structure, or just maybe even character art, right? Where people, draw the characters, but you stuck with like the maps, because when I opened up, I'm with you, probably everyone else here. Well, not Austin, we already know is the Sumerian. That's his favorite book. But, I opened up, I think it was the Two Towers. That was my very first fantasy book I read. And there's a map in there, and I'm like, what the heck is all this? Like, I didn't understand it. But like, you just jumped into this, I'm going to start making maps, or what kind of led into there?
I started my very first map, I believe I was 13, and I made on Microsoft Paint.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It is. Trust me. When I think back I made several maps without an art tablet when I first started. I'm like, how did I do that? I did it with a mouse trackpad. I'm like,
wow.
Oh no.
That is incredible.
And I just kind of fell in love with that. And I made several other maps, and I would come up with concepts for the places and things that would happen in there. I had a few characters that I did write a short story at one point. I think it was for school, and I kind of tied it in with a map I already had. And then I got into a group online. It's still around. It's called Cartographers Guild.
Oh, fun.
And they actually have monthly challenges where you can create different maps every month, depending on the challenge. And it's just the map making community, although it's small and niche, they're some of the most kind and insanely generous people I think I've ever met. And so I kind of fell in love with both sides of the creative and the community, which are just amazing people. So I think I got stuck with that too.
Yeah, that's fair. That's something that's just been so fun about like the writing journey, is like just getting to see like how the creative communities that like you get to be a part of. So like my bachelor's degree, my first one's in painting. And so it's like that community is just so nice and so kind, and you get to see that in the writers. It's like, I feel like on the outside, a lot of people feel like people are really petty and very like, oh yeah, like we're in competition with each other. But like, that's not how it works. Everybody's very sweet, very kind. If somebody sees somebody do something cool, you're like, how did you do that? Show me. And people are more than happy to share.
Yeah. That's my experience with the map making community for sure.
So, I mean, you said by reading, so did you read one of these books? Obviously, Tolkien already had his own map. So did you kind of draw from that and kind of make your own map of what a more detailed, like of Fangorn Forest, or did you, the next book? Oh, Aragorn. That's what you read. You said that one.
I did.
And I'm not familiar if that has a map or not.
It does. Okay. Aragorn has a map, and it's an okay map. I actually haven't made a ton of fan maps. I've done Avatar: The Last Airbender, I made my version of, which is a very cool map. I love that one. And I did a map of Hogwarts, the grounds of Hogwarts. And those are the only two. And I did that one for a friend, so I don't know if that one totally counts.
Totally counts.
Well, it wasn't something I personally would have done otherwise.
That's fair.
It wasn't necessarily a fan map in the same sense. But I started making the maps on Cartographers Guild, and then people would, have their commissions up there. And eventually I got to a point where I started, putting my name up for the commissions, and I got a couple, low-level ones at the start, just like $50 here, maybe one or two a year. And then during the unspeakable times when we didn't have other things to do, I really dove into it and was like, I'm going to be serious about this. And I was drawing maps all day, every day and outreaching, building my portfolios, going online. And since then, I've been fairly consistent with work and commissions.
Wow, that's amazing.
So do you focus, do you have a certain focus on it? Like, do you like doing digital media, or do you, what kind of maps do you prefer?
It's hard because I think digital media is way easier for me to work with the client and produce a really high quality thing that we can edit and go back and forth on. Whereas once I draw with pen, it's done. Okay, it's done.
Yeah.
You can't make edits after that. Yeah. So it's easier to produce a really high quality commission piece digitally than it is traditionally. Although I do work traditionally on a couple maps. But most of my traditional work is for content, content for Instagram, quick stuff that I can just pick up and draw. Everything else is pretty much digital. I like both. Is the answer.
So if someone wanted to commission a map for their novel, not that I would know anybody who might need to do that soon or anything, but myself. So how would you go about doing that? Like, do you go through and read the whole book to get an idea of where everything is, or do they provide you with a list of locations and what's nearby, or how? What's kind of a starting point for you?
Typically, a starting point is seeing their sketch, and I talk about it. I haven't actually read a full book before. I've read, inserts and chapters. I would probably charge extra if they wanted me to read the whole book, just because of the time. Not that I wouldn't enjoy it, it's just the time aspect of the process. So typically I ask detailed questions about specific regions, and I'll come up with a sketch, and I'll send them updates the whole progress, see if they have anything that needs to be changed or added. I think that I end almost every email. Please let me know if anything needs to be changed or added at this point. Yep.
So they would send you like a sketch kind of their own. How many times have you just died laughing when you see these sketches? Because I'm sure if you saw what my sketches of my maps look like, you quite possibly would.
She's already laughing. She already knows.
They're so bad. And like
I've seen
the
some
two little
pretty bad
triangles. This is
ones.
a mountain.
Okay. I mean, to be fair, I have a degree in drawing and painting, and my map for my first book was a circle and just to put dots for where the cities were in relation to each other. I was like, it's good enough to get me through
Yeah.
writing the book. I'll worry about like
Exactly.
everything else later.
hmm And it is like a totally different type of artwork, I think, than most traditional pieces where it's like a portrait. It's detailed, but there's like a really easy beginning and finish with it. Whereas with map making, it's like you could just keep adding stuff
Mhm.
forever,
Yeah.
forever.
Wow.
And maybe it will be done. Maybe it
Especially
won't.
especially with digital, because you can, I think in
Mhm.
some of your stories or posts you zoomed in and then zoomed back out, and it's just like insane, like holy
Mhm.
moly, like you really could create an entire world here, right?
Exactly.
It's something we talk about in the writing community. We call it world builder's disease sometimes. And so I can definitely see that coming across in like map making for sure. It's like, hey, like there's always more room for detail, especially if you have a zoom function.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I have a lot of zoom functions, and then I always make my maps twice as big as the final print is going to be, so I can, for a couple reasons, so that if the author or whoever I'm making the map for wants a bigger image,
Oh, yeah, I would love
they
that.
can create a bigger image with it in the future,
Oh,
and also
man.
I can just add that much more detail.
Right. That just sounds so exciting. I don't have any epic fantasies on my list of books to write yet, but just to have your own map, right, of the world that you built, you created, all the mountains, and oh my gosh, up on the wall, holy moly, that would be amazing.
I do have one of my clients just published or had one of her published books get republished as a I'm blanking here on the term.
Like indie publish or traditional publish or
No, a special edition.
okay. Nice.
So for that, she had me redo the map, but in full color. And when I tell you the amount of excitement I got when I got the book, because she sent it to me, and I have it because I'm going to show it off.
Yeah.
This is her special edition here.
Wow, look at that.
Does that say the Iron Crown on it?
Gold.
Oh.
It is.
The edges.
Wow.
Yes.
Gilded edges.
So
My
pretty.
dream.
Right? And then I'll just open up. So she's got two maps in here of mine.
Oh,
The red light's
wow.
coming in.
Wow.
There's
So
that
pretty.
one.
Oh my
And then-
gosh.
For our listeners, this thing is so far 3 pages, and it is full color, and it is absolutely
Gorgeous.
yes, gorgeous
Isn't it?
color. Absolutely.
Wow. That's
So
amazing.
This is going to go on
That
my
looks
shelf
so
forever,
beautiful.
and I
Yeah.
have the non-special edition for reading.
Oh my gosh.
But
Yes, one for looking and one for reading.
Don't
I have quite a few of those.
so that's probably to date my most like epic reveal of opening. I was like, oh,
Congratulations for both of you. Yeah, that's incredible.
So proud of her.
Okay, so
Thank
you do, yeah, most of the time I see your work as just black and white, but you do, that was going to be a question of mine, you do color on request. Okay, looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you prefer color or do you prefer black and white?
That is a tough question. I would say I prefer color. There's more detail I can add. I can add more textures, like concepts. It's just a fuller, realer world that I can create.
Yeah.
However, the simplicity and like the gorgeousness of black and white maps, I can't discredit it. It's still so beautiful.
Right.
and there's a richness to those too.
Mhm.
But I would say I lean towards the full color as just like the awe factor.
Yeah, I think that the full colors are like this more beautiful, more rich thing, like you're talking about. But there is that nostalgia, like of like cracking open a fantasy book and seeing like a Tolkien-esque like map, and it's just like instantly you know what you're in for in the story as well, and I just love it.
Yeah, I feel like I never really used to look at maps. I was so excited to get to the book and to read what was going to happen. And then the more I started reading fantasy, the more I became enthralled. Like I would spend a little bit of time when I first open the book now, I'll open it and I'll look at the map and I'll just look at, all the different names of the places and kind of look at the map and say, oh, it looks like it's in this kind of area and this is close to this. And so I feel like when I read the book, I have a little bit more of an understanding of the world already. Like I already feel like I know a little bit about the world. And so it really helps pull me in just having a map to look at before I start reading.
Yeah.
And I know you guys are probably gonna maybe feel a certain type of way about this, but I genuinely do judge books by their maps.
That's fair.
Because I'll sit in bookstores and I'll open it up. I was like, why would they do this? They took how many years to write this?
Yeah, true.
And this is what they decided to print on the inside. It makes me so sad.
Well,
I feel like
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
we all have
Holly's
opinions
first.
on this
Yes,
one.
Holly, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like it just shows a lot about the world building, right? Like if you open up this book that's like this big and there's like 3 places on the map, there's really not much world building going on in all those pages. If they, if there's only, because even, writers that talk like that put a lot of thought into their oh my gosh. Writers that put a lot of thought into their world building will mention names of places, even if the character is not going there, because it's somehow linked to the story and it's important. And so I feel like places or, books that don't have anything going on in their maps, it's like, there's nothing going on in your map. Then how is there anything going on in your world? Like what's happening here? How much thought did you really put into it? So that's my 2 cents.
Good points. I was going to say, I just finished Joe Abercrombie's First Law series, 3 books that are like 800 pages each. And guess how many maps? 0. This guy's New York Times bestseller, blah, 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 0 maps. And I am super disappointed because every time we're like, okay, now we're heading to the mountains. Okay, well, where is that? Like whatever. But I'll write him a letter. We'll see what happens.
Well, you can put my name down.
Absolutely.
I'll do it.
Yeah, well, it makes me think it was, what was it, Terry Pratchett, who like famously in the first edition of his books was like, there's not really a map here. Don't worry about it. Like it is all what is in your mind. And like, it's just a sentence. That was his map.
Okay.
Well, I've heard like similar thought processes for people that play D&D, because I also make quite a bit of maps for D&D.
Oh.
And there's some people that are like, no, it's theater of the mind. You don't need battle maps. You don't need world maps. And there's other people that are like, nope, I have to have it. I have to. It's there. I want it. Please give it to me.
Yeah, I'm very much a visual learner and a visual person. And so when I was writing the first draft of my story, I obviously didn't have time to sit down and, figure out where things were. So it's kind of just going along. And as I'm going through and editing it now, I'm starting to write down where all these places are and trying to do like a little sketch of where things are supposed to be and stuff like that. And I feel like it really helps because it helps you understand the areas that you're talking about a little bit more when you start looking at them on a map. And then maybe in the beginning you mentioned something that's by this, town over here, or this city. And then later on you mentioned something else about it. And then you realize that when they're together, they're nearby, there's things that you talk about that don't make sense. And for me, being able to physically see that in front of me, I can make those connections. But if I just kind of mention it, then it doesn't really trigger in my brain to be like, that probably wouldn't happen between these 2 places, or, maybe this should be different. So I feel like for visual learners, it's amazing.
It is. Yeah, I appreciate it more. It's honestly, for me, it's like, like ribeye is fantastic by itself, but like, hey, with a baked potato, it's even, you know what I mean? Like it's perfect. It's a perfect meal. So I feel like maps are it's just fun. It's just fun to like read about a city and like, oh yeah, wait, was that in the valley? And you get the flip pages and go look at it. Ah, here it is.
Or it's icing. It really is.
It is, yeah,
Mhm.
true.
And we could get Swiss meringue icing or chocolate, but
Yeah, yeah,
they're all very tasty.
right.
Mm.
Yeah,
Buttercream.
yeah. There you go, buttercream. Whatever Costco is, I don't care what that. I just that's the I don't even. I have no idea what they use. So you
I love
said.
that.
So let's say, yeah. So Holly needs a map. So you say, okay, I need. Can you just walk us through that process? You said you wanted a simple sketch, but what detail? Go ahead and go into that. What does that look like?
It is different for pretty much every client I have. Usually, they have a sketch, but I've done a couple where it's like off of description, and I'll create a couple different sketches and be like, do you like this landmass, shape better? And then I'll build with them. But usually I have a sketch, quick description, style preference, obviously size and what the map is going to be used for. And then there's extra things you can add if you want. Like if you want a highly detailed frame with illustrations on it, banners, highly detailed locations, you can go up or down in detail and extravagance, or you can keep it simple. And I lay it out for people when they contact me about commission work. And from there, I usually have a down payment because it's a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
And then it's extensive. I've worked on maps for 4 months before,
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can I
And
ask
then
how you charge? You charge by the hour or the map itself, or how does that look like?
by the map. So I
Okay.
have, depending, like a detailed frame would cost more, obviously, because it's a lot more time. Same with the icons. If you want high detailed icons, I have to draw them. It's going to cost more. I do it by type of map personally. And then if you want to add more things later, we can always add more things later. But that's how I personally do it.
Okay.
So even if someone sends you a rough sketch of something, if I was to send you a rough sketch, would you look at it and keep that shape? Or if I'm like, this is just like what I threw together, please make it to whatever like you imagine that it's possibly going to be like, is that kind of what you would do? Or
I normally change stuff up a bit.
very good.
And I always ask, how much do you want me to change? How important is this shape or this placement? A big thing is certain geographical things that don't make sense. Like I've had rivers that go through mountain ranges. Does gravity work the same in your world? That's not gonna happen. If it does work differently, please tell me. But so I'll ask, like, can I change this? Can I change that? This doesn't make sense because of X, Y, and Z, which is more of where the science part comes into it instead of just the artistic part. And if we want to go really deep into it, I could talk about tectonic plates with mountain ranges. I could talk about, rain shadows for deserts, or are we going to have a different type of desert here? Is this a marsh or is it a swamp? How technical do we want to get, or do you want to be more general with your terminology, which is totally okay too. And so I'll just lay out those problems and see what my client wants and doesn't want to change from there.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. I definitely have to make it epic now. So
Yeah, I will say it reminds me of a story about Matt Mercer having people hound him about his maps and how like, hey, some of that doesn't work. And he's like, okay, guys, like, I can't do everything. But
his map isn't bad as far as I'm concerned. Like geographically, if you want to nitpick stuff, you can nitpick stuff.
Right.
But our world has freaking pink lakes that are naturally occurring. Like, let it be a little bit too. It's fantasy. let it be fantasy. We don't have to go off the rails with stuff, but we also don't have to hold ourselves back from making something cool for the sake of it being cool.
I always love when I'm like talking with people about a book or something and it's a fantasy and they're like, oh yeah, and then they had like this weird thing and like they had leggings and that doesn't make sense because there wouldn't be leggings. And I'm like, there's dragons and that's what you're worried about that they like, what's going on here? Like, you know, it's amazing what people will be like, oh, you can't have that in a fantasy novel because it's actually real. I'm like, what? So yes, let fantasy be fantasy and remember that that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did a map not too long ago that has a river through a desert, and I asked him, I was like, he's like, yeah, it's magical. I was like, cool.
All right. Yeah.
I'll put it there.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it works in real life too. Like there are deserts that have rivers through it, and it's just the like rich soil right around it, and it, like the Nile, like it floods and it brings life for a very short period of time, and then it goes away. And so it's like it can be a lot of world building, but you're like, hey, have you considered that this is a little weird?
Or is it a mirage?
Ooh.
Oh.
We'll never know.
I haven't done a psychedelic map.
Oh, see, Nikki snakes.
Like one where stuff isn't real, but I'd love to do that someday, where it's like this is somebody's view of the world. Yeah. But it's not how that world is.
Yeah.
That'd be tough to approach.
Cool.
That would be, but it would be interesting. It'd be like having an overlay of the Middle Earth map, because I don't know if this is a weird thing, but the elves see the world as, you know, flat. They're flat earthers, which is weird. And it actually is to them. That's why they can sail off into the west and other people can't. But then to all the other races, it's round. And so this idea that geography would be super weird when you compare them between one and the other. And so I just think that would be like a super trippy thing to try and put on obviously a two-dimensional piece of paper. So
that's interesting.
Absolutely. And then there's
no, go ahead.
Okay. And then there's the fact that our worlds do change. Like it's ever evolving. I did a map of Pangea probably a couple months ago. So I did a bunch of research into theories about Pangea, and I'm like, wow, some of the tallest, biggest mountains are the youngest mountains, and that's contrary to what you would think. You know, the Himalayas conceptually to us, what we think is pretty young. They're pretty young compared to some shorter mountains that are really old. Some of the oldest mountains, the first mountains, are small in comparison now. So you also have to think about how time changes, and then people change the land, and it's not a linear thing. The world isn't. Your world doesn't have to be either.
Yeah. Now, did you take any classes, cartography classes for this, or background? I'm just asking.
If you find any, you can send them my way.
Okay.
No, I do know that there is a map maker that actually has like a map making tutorial type thing that you can do on one of those sites that has, you know, how to, and you can pay for a subscription. I know Daniel's Maps, who is a fantastic cartographer as well, had one. And I watched some of it, but I didn't feel like I needed to watch all of it. Like, he does a great job.
Yeah.
But as far as like what to do and how to, no. The closest I could get to is Cartographers Guild, which is like just a group of different people that all have a strong connection with map making and different perspectives on it, and they'll talk to you about it. And that's where I learned a lot.
Oh, fun. Well, I mean, your work is brilliant, so you're doing great.
Can you draw other things? Like, are you also an artist on the side, or is this just like, do you strictly do maps? Or, because I mean, maps are like, they're, again, it's art. It's incredible. And so I'm curious if there's like some sort of correlation between the two, or.
I am very artistic and I can draw other things. I'm just not as good at drawing other things. But like, I painted a wooden table to look like it was marble not too long ago, and
Oh, wow.
that was really cool.
Wow.
I have a picture of it somewhere.
Oh gosh,
Kinda
that would be
see
so
one also.
cool. Like a table, like a coffee table, and like your map is painted on the coffee table with like just like glass over top of it.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
Uh-huh.
That's
I've
Yeah,
been
that's something
tempted.
I talk about maps a lot in my books, and so like I have this super big fondness of like carved maps and that kind of look. And so like my favorite map that I ever describe is like they've got like the war table or whatever, and it's like all of it's carved into
Mhm.
one giant piece of wood, and it's
Hmm.
just so nice. Maps are awesome.
I'm trying to think about how I would make something look like a carved map now on a
Mm.
table. I'm
Wow.
not
I
sure,
like that.
but I could probably do it.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Here's the table I did. I don't know how great you can see it, but
Yeah.
it looks like marble.
That's
Oh, wow.
cool.
So
That's
after that,
Mhm.
so I'll do other random stuff
Yeah.
that's artistic, but map making is the main thing
Yeah.
that I do. Like I've done a couple characters. Character design isn't my strong suit.
Hmm.
I've drawn a couple.
And you've been doing this for how long?
2020 steady, and then since when was my first commission? 2015, I think.
Okay.
Like, but on and off since then
Right.
until 2020, and I was like, okay, let's go.
Now you're expert field. Yeah, you're good to go.
Is anybody
Working
else in
on
your family into like art, like any sort of art or drawing or anything? Like
Not as much into drawing. I'm definitely the biggest artist in my immediate family. I do have two siblings that are both aspiring authors and have worked on a couple different books and stuff like that. My oldest brother, he has asked me to make a book or a map for one of his books that he's kind of been working on for the past, he said, like 5 or so years, which is a back burner project for me, but it's there.
did he cry when he got the bill for it?
No, I'm not going to charge him. But he also, he's got several kids and is super busy all the time. So,
So you've got time.
yeah, I've got time. And he's a very successful running coach. So,
Oh, nice.
as random as that is.
Yep. My dad is an incredible artist. Like he can airbrush anything and it just looks amazing. And my brother can draw like unbelievably well. And I am like, I can't put together a stick figure to save my life. Like I'm like, you guys got it all and I got nothing. Like, so I'm always curious.
You're all creative. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm just like all creative up here, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm always curious now when I talk to people that have like a really unique skill like that. I'm like, does anybody else have it or are you just special?
I think map making itself is such a niche thing to specifically only do.
Yeah.
Of course, I know a lot of people now because I've been in the community for so long that it doesn't feel as niche as it is to me, but it really is. There's not a lot of us. So.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, I have a wacky question. And they're going to show up eventually. What is something that drives you crazy? A new client, hey, I need a map. And then you start working with them. You're not naming names. I'm not saying that. We'll get the names later after the show. But I'm looking for like what, what I mean? What like, oh my gosh, you guys, come on, what
Yeah, pet peeves.
Pet peeves, pushes your button.
Okay, one thing, and I think all artists would, especially artists that work on commission, would say is when somebody approaches me and they're like, I trust your artistic, choices, and they don't give you a lot of direction on what they're looking for. And they're like, just make something kind of like this. And then you make it and you put all that time. And then they're like, wait, could you like, and then they have the critique. No, don't, please don't do that. Just tell them what you're looking for at the beginning, please. Because I put the work and effort into it. And if I knew what you were looking for, I could have been like, oh, okay.
Right.
We go
You
this
have the
way.
opinions. Give them.
Yes, please give them. And almost all my clients, I'm like, the more information you want to send my way, just send it.
Mm.
You know, it's okay if you're like, I'm not sure about this, and I'm like, okay, I can make something here. But if you care, and tell them what you're looking for and be specific, because then I can make what you're looking for. So that would be a huge thing for me. And then just don't ghost artists. If you reach out to them and like, hey, and then if you decide no because of price or whatever, just be like, I'm sorry. So they're not in the. I'd way rather hear you be like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't move forward, than never hear anything. So just tell us. Yeah. So those are two things.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest thing? I know you mentioned the river in the desert, but like, what's the weirdest thing or request that you've ever had someone say that they want on a map? Has there ever been anything that you were like, like, or like a strange style of map, or?
I put like a huge egg on a map once, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know how odd
was
that
it like
is.
a real giant egg in their world? Like what was going on?
Yeah, it was on an island. It was like kind of volcanic, and there's just a big. In his drawing, it looked like a Yoshi egg. It was really cute.
Oh, I love that.
I guess that one pops to mind.
Yep, I could see how that would be strange. I'm sure it's relevant to whatever it was, but
I'm sure
to hear about it out of context is.
I mean, I am working with fantasy, so I have, floating islands are one of my favorite things to add to the maps. So many floating islands.
Floating island, as in like up in the air in the sky or whatever. With some
magically floating somehow. I have one that I'm working on that has crystals embedded into it.
Ah, wow.
Love that. I have a giant beehive in one of my maps, which is pretty cool, which I did for the Stubborn Heroes podcast, which was one of my earliest commissions. I'll give them a shout out because they're awesome. And then I think one of my favorite things, because I do listen to their podcast, but anytime they talk about going to a different place, I immediately picture it in my head. I know exactly where they're going. Anytime they move around, I'm like, I know where that is. That's over there.
Yeah, that's funny.
I can picture it.
See, that's exactly my point about like having the maps in a book, right? Like once you know where things are on a map and you read about it later, you already feel like you're involved in it. Like you feel like you're a part of it already. Like you've been there, which is like pulls the reader into the story.
Yeah, but I feel like it's just as important for the writer, because like if I don't have a map sitting in front of me while I'm writing, I'm like, how was this city in relation to the other one? Like they've traveled so much that it's like if I don't have a map, I'm at a loss.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably for me when I'm writing is the most difficult thing to be like, realistically, how long is it going to take for this journey to happen before it doesn't make sense on my map anymore? Or like, you know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, if you're like the journey took 5 days or a week and a half and it's like this far away, then the other things on your map that take 2 days can't be this far away. So I think it's definitely helpful for that. And then, that's a huge thing in your story, like changing the length of a journey is really hard when you've already written the book. So
especially if you have encounters and stuff that happened on that journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Real bothersome.
Yeah.
So I asked you what's stuff that drives you up, the pet peeves, but what's something that gets you excited? Like what's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to work on this.
Oh, so many things. I'm working on one right now, and it's the first time I've ever been commissioned to create a fantasy star chart, which I've made a couple on my own, but I'm like, you're in a fantasy world, stars are going to be different. And I'm like, I've never seen it in a book or anything.
Wow.
But I finally got commissioned to make a fantasy star chart, and I'm so excited. I was so excited about it.
How fun is that?
I can't wait because I'm a big fan of, uh, you know, our stars
Yeah,
and
constellations and all that.
the myths about everything. It's so intriguing. It's never talked about or very briefly, and if it is, we don't ever have a visualization.
Mhm.
And so that's something I was really excited about doing. Um, and then sci-fi maps are actually another thing I'd love to do. I've done a couple. I have a few, but that's just not as much. And I don't think people expect sci-fi stuff to have a map as much as they expect it of fantasy.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's as normalized, and sci-fi authors don't think they need it, but it's so cool. And I love when I get, planetary charts and some other things that I've been able to do before. Super fun.
Oh, that's all kinds of stuff I never even thought about. I'm boring. My books are boring right now. I'm doing San Francisco, so it's 1892. There's no maps necessary.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
I
still
did-
could have maps, though. I mean, you could
Yeah,
have some
exactly.
really cool. That's
Okay.
like not like San Francisco now. It's San Francisco back then would look completely different, right?
Yeah.
And you could make it whatever
Well,
you wanted.
Exactly. Add
Sure.
some steampunk elements. Go all out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good
I was
ideas.
just going to point out, just in my small town, which I'm not going to say where it is, but I've done a little bit of research on like some of our history of our town, and we had a huge flood back in the 70s. And so there's certain parts, like my house was the second floor was 2 inches of water during this flood.
Mhm.
So there was bridges that got wiped out. There was, trains that used to go through the town now are diverted other places. The main bridge to cross the river is now a walking bridge, and there's a different bridge. So it's like, that's only, 50 years.
Mhm.
So you could add a map if you wanted, or find a map and draw inspirations.
Sure.
You don't have to be limited to fantasy for that.
Mhm. Well, it's even, I was speaking with someone one day who in San Jose here in California, she was telling me that she lived here back when most of San Jose was like apple and fruit orchards.
Wow.
And I was like looking around at the million buildings that we have here in this area of in a lot of areas of California. And I'm like, I can't imagine there ever being orchards here. And so I just think like how crazy different it will look compared to how it looks now. Like it's almost unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was actually talking to somebody about it because I live in Texas and we have half of a natural lake. But I grew up going to lakes and going, tubing and stuff. And so I was thinking about it. I'm like, we flooded all of these really huge valleys and everything. I'm like, how gorgeous did those look before we just turned them into these big flat parking lots of water and just like flattened out all of Texas?
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting.
Huh. Well, that is some excellent stuff. Things we don't think about, and I am so glad we had a professional cartographer on today. Now's our time.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. We're learning like everything. It's so flipping cool.
Now I'm going to have to practice my skills so that I'm not
Yes.
embarrassed when I hand over my sketches.
I do
well,
have to tell almost everybody that
Okay.
they're like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, don't be sorry. If you were better at it, you wouldn't come to me.
Oh, true.
Yeah, that's fair.
As long as I know this is a mountain and this is a lake, I'm okay.
I just put an in there so you would know it was a mountain.
Yeah, mine are like the mountains are like this with like a line across, so you can tell that it's like there's snow on it, and then the trees basically look like a triangle, but just with like a little stick beneath them. And I'll put 3 trees together so you know that's a forest. And then the lakes are just like some sort of like squiggly circle.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't figured out the sand yet. Every once in a while, I'll do like a bunch of little dots. So I'm like, this is probably a desert area.
Deserts are tricky to draw. I am not gonna lie. That took me the longest time to find, because I typically have like a couple styles I like for different things depending on how zoomed in. Is this a regional map? Is this a world map? It's different different views look better at different scales. But geez, deserts were tough to make look nice. So don't feel bad.
So if you have deserts, go with the full color.
It is helpful. It is helpful.
That's awesome. All right. Well, now it's time for our don'ts segment. I wish it was a donut segment. That sounds even better. Doesn't sound donuts. Let's go get some
It does
donuts.
sound pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, custard-filled donuts.
Well, for me, it's the bacon, maple bacon. You know, a little crumbled bacon. Oh my gosh, that's the best.
Oh
all
man,
right.
lemon
For you. Yeah.
Mhm.
The lemon curd.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
I really struggled. I'm originally from Canada and we have Timbits. And then when I came to America and kept trying to order, because I love to just pop them in your mouth, right? And like when I came here and they're like, I'm like, well, you guys don't have Timbits? And they're like, no. And it took me like a while to realize that they're just called donut holes here, which to me makes no sense because I'm like,
But they're
What are you
the
talking
hole
about?
in the
This makes
donuts.
sense.
a hole. It's like from the hole. So it's not
Yeah.
technically
Exactly.
a donut hole. Please return my Timbits.
It's a three-dimensional hole. Don't worry about it. It's like an interstellar.
Yes. Yes. However, when I
my
found
fiance is Canadian, so I have also been able to go and get Timbits at some
You're
point.
very good. I recently found some donut holes though, at a local place here because this is what I like to do in my free time is I like to source different donut places because that's one of my priorities. And this place actually has donuts, and depending on the day that you go, they're either filled, the donut holes have holes that are filled with either custard or raspberry.
Oh my gosh.
And I have not managed to convince them to do them on the same day with the same like custard raspberry filling, but I'm
Yeah.
trying very hard for this to push
Going
this
for
on
it.
their menu.
Mm.
Yeah. And
So I would take
now
that over a
that we
Timbit.
had it, put the lemon curd in there too.
Yeah, we've got a
Ooh.
place here that does like lemon zest on top and everything. It's so good.
Yeah, delicious.
Lemon zest
I
on
haven't had a
everything.
good donut in so long.
Gosh. Sorry. I
Those are
like there's a like what?
Oh, those are like one of the hard things to make yourself because I can
Yes.
bake
Hmm.
a lot, but donuts to get
Mhm.
right,
Mm.
Yeah.
can't just whip up a batch.
Mm.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, now we've
I
been
always-
really distracted by donuts.
Yes.
No, this is fine.
Donut.
Failed.
This is what
Perfect.
we're here
Oh.
for. We've never talked about donuts, and we're happy to talk about donuts.
We are.
Yeah.
Our second hour with Dominique on donuts.
Donuts.
Donuts of your life.
You know what's crazy? I have a donut map that my niece half made with
What?
me at some point. I don't know where it is.
What's a donut map? Like it's shaped
Oh
like
man,
a
if there's
donut?
not, there should be a
Well,
bay that's like a bite taken out of it. Oh, so I
She
love.
painted it for me, and
That's-
she wanted it pink and purple, and she painted a circle, and it ended up looking like a donut. I was like, "Hey, is it okay if it's a donut island?" And she was like, "Yeah."
Oh,
Yeah,
fun.
It's ideal if
great.
it's a donut island.
I haven't finished it totally, but it's somewhere laying around.
And actually, now that you say that, I have a giant donut in the middle, kind of one of my maps, and I'm like, oh, it's just an island
That's
inside of an
amazing.
island. It's fine.
Huh.
Oh, there is one actually like that. I think it's actually 3 islands within an island somewhere in Canada. But like up high where you've got all of the different island regions. I
Hudson
want
Bay.
to say it's above Manitoba.
Huh.
But
I don't
I
know.
can't say that
I
for
taught
sure.
geography. It doesn't mean I know geography.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly. I know it's up in Canada, somewhere in the northern region. It's like this island within an island within an island.
Wow.
Something random like that.
That's insane.
So it works.
Ooh, I got a question. Underwater maps. Have you ever done like an undersea kingdom kind of thing?
I haven't. I have
Uh-oh.
seen a couple done, and I haven't ever done one. I've wanted to do one. Just haven't had, a reason, basically.
Bob, next book, underwater.
That's what I'm doing. I have it all
Okay.
in my head. We'll just make it all underwater. Like who cares?
I think
Just sink San Francisco. It's not a big deal. Bay right there.
It's gonna happen eventually.
Oh, we're just kidding, guys. If you happen to be in this area, don't worry. We'll warn you.
Are we kidding though? Isn't it like Venice? Isn't it slowly, it's bound to happen?
I did sink New York City in a map once.
Oh, like that.
Yeah. There you go.
Well,
All right. Well, back to our
okay.
don'ts.
The important
Don't get
thing.
distracted.
Oh no, that was fun. I love that. Yeah. We're gonna have to talk about it. We gotta do that. Maybe that'll be our new segment. Start talking about donuts.
Our donut section.
Yeah. But anyway, don'ts. So Dominique probably has a list of don't do this when we're. I'm not gonna say when we're making a map because we're not here to make. We want to contact Dominique to make our maps. But what should we either think about or not do during that process?
So there's a couple things. One pet peeve of mine, and I know this goes back to the iconic Middle Earth map of J.R. Tolkien, where half of the land or half of the map is land and half of the map is water.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have a coast, and then there's a box with land and a box with water.
Mm-hmm.
And that usually doesn't work out great because most coasts or natural landmarks are around rivers and mountains, and that doesn't usually break up into a square. So I don't really like square maps, and I would encourage people to veer away from square-looking land masses and square-looking maps, just because it's been done so much, and it doesn't really make logical sense. So that's a personal one.
Okay.
And it also is interesting. Go ahead.
Okay.
I was just going to say, it reminds me of the quote that God doesn't draw with a straight line.
That is perfect. And we have a square piece of paper and you want to fill it with interesting things. I know why people do it. So that's one thing that I'd say try not to do unless you have a really specific reason to do it within your world building. One, rivers, they come typically from highlands and they go branch out, or they branch together and then out to the sea. So from mountains to the sea. I will fix them, but the very simple way to do it is highland down.
Yeah, gravity. Think about gravity. When you're thinking about rivers. Okay.
It's actually really, really good to think about because I feel like when I was doing mine, I knew I wanted a river, but I didn't know what to do with either end of it. So I just drew it from the bottom where you couldn't see the one end and just do and off across to the other side. So I'm I don't know how to deal with the ends. So I'm just gonna pretend they just go farther than I know where they go.
They go somewhere.
It's lightning coming out of the ocean. Don't worry about it.
That is how it works, the technical terms.
Yep.
And then, as far as you don't have to be trapped by how realistic things have to be in our world. But if you want to do your research, go ahead, do your research and pick out. But the more you do your research about stuff that exists here, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I'm good. I can add crazy stuff because there are crazy things here. It just, there's rivers that are multicolored because the algae that grows within it. There's, obviously there's iconic things like the Nile, which we already talked about. There's so much that you haven't heard about. It's just so cool. And then you look at how many biomes are just in Australia and you're like, okay, I could get away with stuff. And even, America, if you really want to just do a search, it's crazy. You have obviously huge rain shadow that goes from the mountains over in California that creates the Midwest, which is dry and desolate. And then you have the Atlantic Ocean that pushes really warm air, which creates a really nice, eastern edge. So if you want to do it something that you guys can easily kind of connect the dots with and experience personally. And it's crazy when you start to think about stuff that actually exists. So don't hold yourself back in your world building. Just don't. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Really go crazy.
Right.
Well,
And
I will
I'm-
say,
it's fantasy.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm probably going to steal Austin's here. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Just reiterating again what I said earlier, regarding my don't for today is don't forget to come up with places to put on your map. Even if they don't play a huge role in your story, nobody wants to open a book and see this huge, beautiful, glorious map that has 3 locations on it. No, I understand if it's for a series and you're going to slowly continue to add to it, that makes sense. But even if you're planning on doing a series, you should be planning this series quite a ways out. And so you can still mention some of these places, even if they don't come up again until your 3rd or 4th book. Mention them and then have like maybe the main city on the map somewhere, or like a different, if something's on a different continent, have the name of that continent over there. So you can always go back and reference those later, but it just fills your world a little bit more and it just makes your world feel a little bit more believable.
Nice.
You didn't steal mine, but it was actually, yours was kind of the opposite of what my first thought was, because my first thought was, don't be afraid of white space. Okay, because there's not significant things in a people-centric idea of important things everywhere in the universe. It's fine. The void exists too. But my actual thing was going to be don't treat your map as an afterthought. Like, it is a useful tool for you along the journey. And whether it's like we were talking about with travel times, like you can have a nice little chart and be like, hey, like this is the distance scale of everything. Here's how quickly you can do a march, a fast march, a forced march, or whatever, like different things. And that way you have those consistencies, because it's a lot easier to get it done when you got a map in front of you than to try and figure it all out later and realize, oh man, my 2 different parties are going to get there at like a week apart. Oops, I really effed up the entire thing. And now I've got to slow down one party by a week or speed the other one up somehow. So yeah, just don't treat it as an afterthought. And like, you can get so much out of just throwing out a name of like a river. It's like, oh yeah, this like river starts back at the, like the, whatever lake or this mountain range. Like, it's so easy to just throw in a line. And if you have that all built out and consistent, which is, key, and maps help with consistency. So just, go all out.
Nice. That reminds me of when I was making a map. I didn't have a story. I just wanted to make a map first. And then
I don't know what that's like.
and I wrote the name of the river that went through this big island, because it's just an 8 by 10 sheet of paper. It was Nomis. So I pronounced it Nomis, the Nomis River. And then my cousin comes over. He goes, "Oh, the Nomis River. You can't miss it. Ha ha." And I was like, "Well, I'll throw this away."
That's
sorry.
a very good point. Always
So relatable.
This is not just for maps, but just writing in general. Say everything out loud, and say it to some people too before you publish a book, because they are going to make a joke about your
Austin,
random
that's a
people.
different topic. We're talking about math right now. I'm not talking about.
I know, but names are very important to maps.
You're right.
They
Depending
are.
on your kind of map.
It's so true. I'm going to bring up a pet peeve that I have about this is when I show someone a map that I made, and the first thing they start to do is be like, they'll sound out the names, and I'm like, I didn't come up with the names. Like, that's literally the one thing I didn't do. Thanks for noticing.
Oh, that just makes me think, though, it'd be really cool for because here in our real world, we call the same thing different things in different languages and different cultures. So like having a series where it's like you have almost the same map, but then different names for all the different places. I think that'd be really fun.
That would be really cool.
That would be fun.
Different perspective map, absolutely. I mean, plus people get so, oh, this isn't realistic. This isn't realistic. You do realize that the way that most of us view our world and maps is completely and utterly skewed. Because
like we
projection.
could rotate our whole Earth 180 degrees.
Yeah, but like most of the Africa is significantly bigger.
Yeah.
Than what we think it is, because the way that we project maps onto a flat piece of paper makes it look small. Where it's like Russia looks way bigger than Africa, and it is the opposite in reality.
Wow.
Absolutely. Start looking it up. It's crazy. Like, our perception of the world is so skewed because of
I
the
feel
way that we've seen maps.
I feel like you need to talk to people who live in Texas because they think their state is the biggest.
Oh no!
You were right. Our country
Landmass.
is really big.
There you go. I just said it for you. Your country.
But I mean, yeah, and it's weird because like you start putting things into perspective because like yeah, you got Africa that's bigger than Russia, but Russia's bigger than Pluto, and like we don't really. Yeah, I know, right? So like you don't consider about how all these things are in relation to each other because you don't see them next to each other. And the way that we put them on maps, it's like okay, like Africa's skewed to Russia, but then we never see planets next to actual countries and like maps of that and like landmass and consider anything like that. And so yeah, it's so easy to get this disconnect between scales and stuff.
Perspective of stuff. Absolutely.
Right.
I think one of the coolest maps I saw of our world was where it was a top-down perspective where Antarctica was in the middle and then the continents were put out that way. And I was like, that changed my whole perspective of our world. And I was like, that's so cool.
Wow.
It was amazing to see.
I
almost
wanna
didn't
say-
recognize it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I want to say as well, I should have said this way earlier at some point. Not waiting until we're halfway through our don'ts here to do it. But anyway, here it is. Just a tip for writers as well. I feel like if you spend time, maybe you don't want to do it in the beginning before you write your first draft, because if you're like me, you're too excited and just want to get it on paper. Or you're worried you're going to procrastinate. And so you just want to get it on paper. Either way, once you get past that first draft, really spend some time and think about what your map would look like. Think about where things are, think about what is the ground like? Like, is it a desert here? Or is it, like clay loam, or what is it like? Because thinking about those fine details that you would only think about in relation to a map is really going to help you describe your world in your writing. And so once you know those things about your map, then when you go into your second and third and fourth and 10th draft, then you can actually put those details into your story, and it's going to help pull your readers in even more.
That's brilliant.
So that's my.
No,
I don't know. These things just come to me at the worst possible time.
That's not worse. I mean, we're still here. It'd be worse, like for the rest of it, it'd be like 2 hours later, laying in bed, like, oh my gosh, I should have said this.
Man,
I am gonna piggyback off of that a little bit. Whereas I also want you guys to think about whether or not you want what story you want your map to tell. And by that, I mean, like, is this a map that was made by somebody that lives in your world? Is it a reflection of what they had available to them? Who commissioned them to make their map? Is it going to have political undertones possibly? Because our maps do. Our maps absolutely had political undertones when they were made.
Every 4 years, they're extremely political.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's go into that. No.
Suddenly, we're talking about gerrymandering.
Exactly.
But like, what story do you want people to immediately see when they open your book?
Gosh,
do they want it to be lighthearted and free? Do you want it to be really grungy and dark, just in style? Do you want it to feel like a kid drew it? You could do that. So you could think about it as, is it the way the main character sees the world?
Right. I love
or is it covered in blood because Austin kills off all of his characters?
Wow.
Oh no.
That is fair. But I was thinking, like, how fun would it be? Because it's like, we always think of maps like opening up like the entire book. But like, I usually tell it from like a series of like, 3 to 5 different like protagonists or main characters. And it's like to open up their section, like their first chapter with, this is the map that they grew up with and that they see the world as. And so it's like, one, it's like, oh, I think my country is like the biggest thing in the world and like everything else is like this fringe. And it's like, no, like the second character is like, you're a tiny little dot. Like, what are you even doing here?
Ooh, or like every few chapters, like you start with like a very minimal map, and every few chapters, as the world starts to grow, you have another map that's a little bit more expanded upon, and then a few more chapters.
I had a concept for this, where it's you have a book, and then every time the character gets to a new place, you have a bookmark on that chapter that is the next puzzle piece. For the map.
I like that.
Domino.
That's very cool.
So I don't know how you could manage that in printing and everything, but how cool would that be?
That's very cool.
I don't know why, but like that would just be so epic.
Yeah, sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be more
Sticker. Ooh, or you could do scratch off.
fun. Scratch off.
That would be so cool.
Wow.
Oh goodness.
Just
I
scratch
don't-
off the fog of war.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
That'd make more sense.
Mm-mm-mm.
All right, let's get back to our drinks. This is a blast.
One
Yeah.
more.
Hour 2 is going to be fantastic, guys.
I was just thinking, like,
What
Bob's
time
gonna
is
kill
it?
us. We
No!
were lectured about this in advance.
No, it's just fun. This is fun. Oh, I know.
See-
Yeah, I'm always trying to keep it under an hour. It's like, nope, it's already past an hour, so that's okay. We're fine. Everyone's awake. We're having a great
Well,
time.
we're just waiting on you for your dome.
Oh, yeah.
Bob.
Oh, okay. I'll go ahead.
God.
I'll stop dilly-dallying. You're right. I'll get in there. I still have no idea what my dome would be. It would be, I think, how about, I would think, since I, like I talked about before, I didn't start off with an epic fantasy, so, like, there's no need for a map. But if I were to get into one, I would say, yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions, especially if you contact Dominique with her socials and go, hey, I have an idea. Can you help me with this? Or another thing I was thinking of is, because I have no idea what my world would look like on paper. What I would do, though, is just go on Google Maps and, like, start looking at coastlines. Probably not where I grew up, where I'm familiar. I'd rather go look at someplace else. Go see how the rivers work, what the mountain ranges kind of look like. I'm not saying copy all that, but just kind of head in that direction. And with that, start asking questions like, would this work? Or does this work? Or does this make sense? Because I feel like, personally, I would be the one that go like, I have no idea about a map, so I'll just not do a map because I have no clue. Does that make sense? All right.
It's another element that authors would be like, well, I have to become an expert in this field now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So time to deep dive into the
Yeah.
research. Hopefully I can like subsidize that for people
Yeah.
and have that burden off.
Yeah. And also, like, don't forget about elevations. I don't know how that play out on a map, but I think like we all talk about we just look at the map and just go, oh, everything's like, about 5 feet above sea level, but
Yeah.
it's not. I mean, where I'm at, there's some hills, but I'm about 1,200 feet up from the ocean. And it doesn't have to be like in the mountains, in other words, for it to be a high.
And that also reminds me that, like, a matter of how you look at things, but like Upper and Lower Egypt. Upper Egypt is in the south because it's higher elevation, and that's why the Nile runs north, because it's a higher elevation. So it's running that direction. So don't make all your rivers run south, people. It's also very Eurocentric of you to make your rivers run south.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other thing.
All right.
Well, there's so many elements about that movie.
Yeah. It sounds like we need to have Dominique on.
Episode 2.
Yeah.
I'm up for it.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Thanks,
I
Dominique.
I feel weird. I feel like I should get a headset now.
No. You know what I've noticed? Actually, you bring that up, but most of because all of the hosts have, an over-the-ear headset, like a gaming headset, but most of our guests have just earbuds. I think that's interesting. I never thought about that.
Well, it's probably because we do this multiple times a week
True.
sometimes, and they
You're
do
right.
it every once in a while.
You're right.
Would be my guess. I don't know.
We're
I just
all
like them because I
nerdy
felt
gamers.
like, I felt like it, plugs into my headphone or my microphone. So then it's, I don't know. I Googled it and they said
You
this
can
is
get
what
the
I
monitor.
needed.
Yeah, that way you can hear yourself too. It's weird, but that's the whole thing.
Looks
Doing a
professional
podcast,
too,
what do I need?
so.
All right. Okay, that's it. We're done. We're edging on like an hour and a half probably. Dominique.
The next episode about donuts coming soon.
Yes.
Yes.
Donuts
We can
with
cut that
Dominique.
section out and use it on the next one.
That's awesome. That was so fun. We had such a blast with you. I love having guests on, and you're just outrageously. You're just so fun. And
Thank you.
And you just helped us out so much about maps and cartography, things we don't think about, and that's huge. That's what we love, because there's always a brand new writer coming on here and going, what do we? I didn't even think about. So that would be me. I didn't even think about a map. Yeah.
Well, there's so
How
many
dare you,
times that
Bob.
I'm online and I'm like, somebody will mention something. And I'm like, I've never even added that to a map.
Mm,
Crazy. Well, like, because I've been trying to do this segment on Instagram because it did pretty well. And the more my name gets out, the more work I get. So you got to do the grind online.
Mhm.
Whereas I'm like, if you're struggling with what to add to your maps, have you tried X? And then I show a certain amount of that thing that I've done in maps. And one of them I did was magical beasts, because I've added magical beasts to a certain amount of maps, whether it's, monsters, water monsters, and I was like, I've like added like only four dragons to maps. That's weird. I thought that I would have had, like, I was looking through, I'm like, I hardly have any dragons. What's with this?
Oh, there we go, guys.
Poor
Make some
dragon.
I need some more dragons.
I've got a book that involves dragons in the back of my mind after
There you
I
go.
finish my trilogy that I'm like dying to write so
Oh,
badly.
boy.
I love the idea for it. So I'm like, now that you mentioned that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's
Oh,
perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And then I had somebody suggest that I draw worms, like a couple different versions of how to draw worms. So like, I've never done that.
Huh.
That
Like,
would be so cool in a map.
Yeah.
Like, so there's worms, which are like dragon types but don't have wings.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then there's drakes, which are smaller dragons, and then
Mhm.
there's dragons. If we're talking about like lore, I think more specifically.
Okay,
D&D.
worms as in WYRN. Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. Not to be
I can
confused with
grab them.
earthworms.
I
or
thought she was talking
sandworms.
about earthworms or from because Dune
Yes,
has
well,
worms and
Yeah,
then,
well, those
very,
are still
very
a different
Dune-like.
classification of.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so worms.
I think it's in the sketchbook.
WYRMS.
I
Yeah,
gotta find
worms and
which-
wyverns or
which
wyverns or
sketchbook.
however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like, these were the ones I came up with.
Okay, yeah.
Oh
And,
yeah.
I
Oh
was
my
like,
goodness.
how cool.
That one in the
Well, I
middle, that
never-
down center looks like Smog from yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely inspired
Beautiful.
by that one. But I was
Very
like,
cool.
I never would have
Yeah.
thought to add that. And now I get to, because somebody was like, hey, do it. I will.
That is so
Mm-mm-mm.
cool. All right. Yeah, we definitely need to have you on again. You could just take us through your sketchbook. I want to do that. I love sketchbooks.
Which one?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Good.
Hold the phone.
2 hours worth of
You want,
sketchbooks.
like,
Let's do this.
My nice
Or
one.
we'll just have
you
our
want my
maps on there and she can
not
critique them and
nice
call us bad.
No, I want your first one, like the one when you were
Oh, I've
15
got-
years old.
I can show it to you. I don't have it on paper because it's a digital map. That's also kind of odd, is to work on digital first.
That's right.
But it's out there. It's not great. It's there.
Hey, it's
It will
okay.
make you feel better, and
Yeah.
it is a square map too, which a lot of the concepts are.
If you want to feel better, at least your first map didn't get published. Like mine, I just was like, I want to throw it out there, and it's in my book, so I had to live with it for forever.
It's
until I
out
do a
there
second
now.
All right, so Dominique, once more, where can we find you?
So Domino44 Maps on Instagram, Twitter, ArtStation, and
Ooh, ArtStation.
Yeah,
I love
I have a
ArtStation.
bit on ArtStation.
Okay.
It's nice. Most of my attention goes to Instagram.
Okay. And that's how,
Um,
if somebody wants to contact you to commission you, probably Instagram's
Yep.
the best place.
DM through Instagram. You can email me at the.44.domino@gmail.com. That's fine too. You can email
Okay.
me directly.
All right. Well, again, it was fantastic having you. We will definitely have you on again because we have so much more to talk about as far as donuts go. And so don't forget to write and subscribe to our channels at the link below so you don't miss any of the Writer's Realm content. So we always love to hear from our listeners. So if you have a question or topic you want us to get or dive into, get in touch. And if you got any questions about maps, or experiences with map, we would love to hear from you. So please get in touch with us. Until then, we will talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.